The courtroom sat heavy with tension, the kind that crept into your lungs and tightened your breath. The gavel slammed, sharp, brutal. A woman's scream followed, raw and unfiltered. Janelle Carter collapsed to the floor as the bailiff rushed toward her. Her son, Michael, had just been sentenced to life without parole. The judge didn't flinch. The prosecutor closed his briefcase. A flashbulb popped from the press bench, catching Janelle at the moment her body gave out. Michael didn't move. The 17-year-old stood still in shackles, eyes empty. No anger. No fear. Just the void. As the bailiff nudged him forward, he turned slightly and whispered, "This wasn't justice. This was revenge." No one responded. No one looked at him. Only the echo of the gavel remained, reverberating like a war drum through a room that had already forgotten he was a child. Michael was never the type to cause trouble. Teachers called him a model student. He kept to himself, loved science, and stayed late to help in the library. His mother, Janelle, used to joke he was born old, responsible, quiet, maybe too serious. At 17, he juggled school, part-time work, and caring for her during her chemo. He was everything a system claims to protect. Yet that system threw him away in one afternoon. On the wall above his bed hung a framed acceptance letter from State College. He never got to open the envelope. That night, it still sat sealed, the gold emblem shining in the lamplight. Janelle had left it untouched, like a memorial. It was the night before everything went wrong, before the house party, before the blood, before the silence that screamed louder than any siren. Janelle stood in that bedroom every night after the sentencing, staring at that envelope. She hadn't touched a thing. Michael's shoes were still lined up at the door, his toothbrush beside hers. The silence of the room mocked her. She used to find comfort in silence. Now it felt like guilt. She replayed every moment. Did she let him go out too easily? Did she trust the system too much? The headlines hadn't helped. Teen killer caught, justice served. They never asked who he was, just who they needed him to be. His face, still boyish, was plastered across newspapers with shadows cast to make him look menacing. But Janelle remembered the boy who cried during Finding Nemo. One who carried her chemo meds without being asked. That boy didn't belong in a cage. That boy deserved the life inside that envelope. On the wall near the kitchen hung a calendar. Janelle hadn't marked a date since the trial. Each day looked the same, blank boxes, empty spaces. She used to plan everything, Michael's shifts, her appointments, even their movie nights. But now, time was shapeless. She sat at the kitchen table, staring at a cracked ceramic mug. It was his favorite. Blue with a chipped rim. The last time he used it, he laughed. She barely remembered why. Just the laugh. It echoed inside her now, a cruel echo. Outside, a bus rumbled past, same as always. Inside, the air felt stale. She hadn't opened a window in days. Grief hung thick. But beneath it, something stirred, quiet at first, like embers refusing to die. She found herself outside the courthouse again, 3 weeks later. She didn't remember driving, didn't plan to come. Yet there she stood, eyes fixed on the stone pillars. It wasn't just about her son anymore. It was about how easy it had been for them. The system had moved on like Michael was a number, not a name. She clutched a folder close to her chest, a copy of the trial transcript, her notes, the names of people who had testified. She didn't know what she was looking for. A loophole. A crack. A sign. Anything. The city bustled behind her, but inside her, time had stopped. One thought remained. If no one else would fight for him, she would. Janelle started at the edges. The courthouse doors wouldn't open for her again, so she took the back roads. She visited the house where the party took place. It looked so normal. White paint peeling. Toys in the yard. Beer cans still stuck between the fence posts like ghosts of that night. No one answered the door. A neighbor peeked through blinds but didn't speak. Janelle stood outside for an hour, hoping something, anything, would move. Curtain. A voice. She walked around the block 3 times, staring at the sidewalk like it held the truth. She knelt and touched a faint stain near the curb. Her hand trembled. This was where it started. This was where her son's life split in half. She whispered his name under her breath. The wind answered with silence. But Janelle didn't move. She had questions now, and she was done waiting for permission to ask them. The next day, she walked into the corner store near the party house. Clerk looked up, startled. You Michael's mom? She nodded. He hesitated, then leaned in. That kid didn't seem like the type. He used to come here for snacks, always polite. She asked if he remembered the night of the party. He glanced over his shoulder, lowered his voice. I saw them, 2 boys, drunk. One had a bruise on his jaw. Not your son, the other one, loudmouth. I think his name was Caleb or something. Janelle's heart raced. She scribbled it down. Caleb. You didn't tell the cops. He shrugged. They didn't ask, and no one wants to get involved. That last line hit her. No one wants to get involved. But someone had to. She walked out clutching the name like a matchstick in a cave. It wasn't much, but it was something. She found Caleb's name buried in old social posts, tagged photos, party videos. In one, he was shirtless, laughing, red Solo cup in hand, next to a girl who looked haunted. Janelle paused the video. The girl. Something in her eyes. She looked like she wanted to vanish even while smiling. Janelle found her name. Elena. She went to the high school. The staff was hesitant, guarded. We can't share student information. But one secretary took pity. Elena withdrew. 2 days after the verdict. No forwarding address. Janelle sat in her car afterward, stunned. It wasn't a coincidence. The girl knew something. Maybe everything. And someone wanted her gone. The system didn't protect Michael. It erased Elena too. But Janelle had her photo now. A face to find. No. She walked the streets for hours, photo in hand. Apartment lobbies, bus stops, even shelters. Most people shook their heads. One woman said, she used to come through here real jumpy, never stayed long. Janelle begged for more, but she just shrugged. By nightfall, her feet ached, and her hope thinned. On her way back to the car, a voice stopped her. I know her. A man leaning against a wall, hoodie up, eyes sharp despite the wear. That girl saw something she shouldn't. After the trial, she got scared. Real scared. He paused. Told me your boy didn't do it. Said he saw who did, but wouldn't talk. Janelle's breath caught. Where is she? The man shook his head. Gone. She vanished 2 nights ago. The words hit like a hammer. The truth was real. But the truth was in danger. At home, Janelle spread her findings across the kitchen table. Photos, names, printouts, hand-scrawled notes. A chaotic map of grief and truth. She hadn't eaten. She hadn't slept. But she saw something now. Patterns, gaps, questions they never asked in court. The evidence was thin because no one had looked. Not really. Not like a mother would. Her phone vibrated. Another appeal denied. Another door closed. She looked up at the wall. Michael's photo stared back. Young, proud, full of dream. She whispered, I'm not stopping. She wasn't just grieving anymore. She was gathering. The grief had turned to fuel. The silence had sharpened into resolve. Somewhere out there the truth was buried. And Janelle was ready to start digging with her bare hands. Janelle's living room had become a command center. Legal pads covered the couch. String tied together photos on the wall. It looked like a detective's den. She hadn't worked in weeks. Her voicemail was full. Even her pastor stopped calling. Everyone said the same thing. Move on, grieve, accept it. But Janelle wasn't grieving anymore. She was hunting. She reread Michael's letters. One line stopped her cold. "There's a boy here who said he saw what happened that night, but he won't say it loud. Says he's scared they'll make him disappear too." That was new. She circled the sentence. Her hands trembled. Was this another witness? Another crack in the wall? She called the prison. No answer. She called again. Nothing. She grabbed her keys. If they wouldn't answer the phone, they'd answer her face. The prison sat like a fortress, gray and unwelcoming under a thick blanket of clouds. Janelle waited in the visitor's line, her folder clutched tightly to her chest. An officer looked over her papers. "You already visited this month." She tried to explain, to beg, but the officer didn't budge. "Come back next month, or file a request." She stood frozen as others walked past. Michael was just beyond those walls, and they were telling her to wait. Again. She stepped aside, pulled out her phone, and started recording. "My son is inside, innocent. I've got evidence. They're keeping me out." The officer tried to stop her, but she didn't care. Maybe the courts wouldn't hear her. But the internet might. The video spread faster than she expected. Comments poured in. Some supportive. Many cruel. And maybe your son deserved it. Where was your parenting? Another thug in jail who cared. But buried between them was a message. "I was at the party. I saw what happened. He didn't do it." Janelle froze. The username was fake, but the tone was real. She messaged back. Nothing. Hours passed. Then, another. "Meet me. Tomorrow. Dined. Alone." The message vanished after she read it. She stared at her screen, unsure if it was real or a cruel prank. But she knew one thing. She'd be there. No matter what. Because someone out there still had the truth. And maybe, just maybe, they were ready to speak. The meeting spot was an old park near the edge of town. Abandoned swings, cracked pavement, wind rustling through dead leaves. Janelle arrived early. She sat on a bench, heart pounding. Minutes passed. Then she saw her, Elena. Same eyes. Same haunted look. The girl sat down without a word. After a long pause she said, "Michael didn't kill anyone. He tried to stop it." Janelle leaned in, barely breathing. Elena continued, "The boy who did it. He was the Diaz nephew. Everyone knew. But they told me to stay quiet. Said if I talked, I'd regret it." Janelle whispered, "Why are you here now?" Elena looked up, tears in her eyes. "Because I can't sleep. Because it's eating me alive." Janelle reached out slowly. Elena didn't flinch. The next morning, Elena was gone. Janelle called, messaged, searched. Nothing. Nothing. No response. The girl had disappeared again. She went to the police station, demanded they take her statement. "Without the girl, it's hearsay," they said. "We can't act on rumors." Janelle slammed her hand on the desk. "It's not a rumor. It's a confession." The officer didn't blink. "Unless you have proof, we're done." Janelle walked out shaking. Her breath caught in her throat. It wasn't just indifference, it was obstruction. She looked down at her phone. One blurry photo Elena had let her take. It was all she had now. But it was enough to keep going. Someone out there wanted silence. But silence wasn't going to win. Not this time. The silence in Janelle's house was different now. No longer mourning but focus. She sat with her laptop going back over the trial transcripts for the 100th time. That's when she saw it. A note buried in the exhibit list. Surveillance footage? Dismissed. Not admissible. She froze. Surveillance? From where? She dug deeper. The address was across the street from the party house. She pulled up Google Maps, tracing the corner. A pawn shop. Her breath caught. There was a camera. A clear one. Facing the street. She whispered, "They had footage." She got in her car, not caring that it was midnight. If that camera had seen anything, then someone had hidden it. Not lost, buried. And she was going to dig it up, no matter what. The pawn shop looked like any other, neon signs, barred windows, cluttered displays. The clerk, mid-60s, white, bald, grunted when Janelle asked about old security footage. "That's from years back," he said. "We wipe tapes monthly." But Janelle didn't flinch. "You were subpoenaed. You listed footage in the trial." The man looked caught. "That's not my department. Talk to the DA." She stared him down. Then, as if trying to make her leave, he muttered, "There's a backup drive. Wasn't used. Shouldn't exist." Her eyes widened. "Where?" He gestured to the back. "Storage, not public." She stepped closer. "Then, let's go together." He hesitated, then finally nodded. She followed, heart pounding. What she needed might be behind that door. Or maybe everything would crumble. But she had to see. The storage room was colder than expected. Metal shelves lined the walls, filled with cables, broken monitors, boxes of outdated hardware. The clerk handed her a dusty external drive. "It's probably corrupted," he said. She didn't care. She took it and left without another word. Back home, she plugged it in. For 10 minutes, nothing happened. Then a folder popped up, Cam Dump 2018. She opened it. Dozens of files. Shaky angles. Traffic. People walking. And then, there it was. The party. Kids spilling into the street. One boy yelling. Another staggering back. Michael, standing still. Then a third boy stepping forward. A sudden shove. The crowd scattered. It wasn't Michael. It never was. Her hand flew to her mouth. Date and time were clear. So was the boy's face. She showed the footage to a contact from a legal aid group. A young lawyer named Ray, idealistic but smart. His face turned white as the video played. This changes everything. Why wasn't this submitted?" Janelle said. "That's what I'm going to ask the DA." Ray tried to stop her. "Let me file the motion, if you go alone." But she was already up. "They're not going to ignore me again." She walked into the DA's office the next morning, without an appointment. The receptionist rose to stop her, but she pushed forward, threw the flash drive on the counter and said, "This was never in court, and I want to know why." Heads turned. Phones paused mid-air. The room stilled. Janelle didn't care. Silence had failed her before. Now her voice was going to burn. The DA didn't respond. Not directly. But someone did. That night, Janelle got a call from a blocked number. A man's voice, low, cautious. "You're right. The tape exists. They buried it." Her pulse jumped. "Who are you?" The voice ignored her. "The boy who did it, he's the Diaz nephew. They sealed records, transferred him out of state, gave him a new name. Your son was easier to convict." Janelle couldn't speak. Her knees went weak. "Why tell me now?" Silence. Then, "Because they think they've won. But some of us are done being quiet." The line clicked dead. She sat on the floor shaking. It wasn't just negligence. It was conspiracy. And now she had proof. Real proof. They could erase a boy. But not this time. Not again. Janelle stood once more on the courthouse steps, the very place her world had shattered. But this time she wasn't empty. She had the footage. The timeline. The voice message. Her hands trembled, not with fear, but fury. Ray met her at the doors, briefcase in hand. "I filed the motion for a hearing, but they'll try to delay, discredit, deny." Janelle nodded. "Let them. We don't need their permission to speak anymore." A small crowd gathered outside. Activists, a few reporters, people holding signs with Michael's face. Janelle walked past them and straight into the courthouse. Same walls. Same chill in the air. But she wasn't the same woman. This time, she wasn't begging for justice. She was demanding it. Inside the courtroom, the judge flipped through the motion papers slowly, lips pressed in a tight line. The Da sat with folded arms, expression unreadable. Ray stood, voice steady as he played the footage. Silence fell. Everyone watched as Michael stood frozen in the video, while another boy lunged, shoved, and ran. Janelle didn't breathe. The judge paused the footage, looked up. Why was this not submitted in the original trial? The Da hesitated. It was deemed irrelevant by the lead investigator. The judge's eyes narrowed. Irrelevant? The weight of that word hung thick. Ray leaned in. Your Honor, this is deliberate suppression. Janelle watched the Da's face shift. Not panic, but calculation. They were cornered now. But they wouldn't go down quietly. The press got wind. By noon, the courthouse lawn was packed. Microphones, tripods, and retail. Live feeds. Janelle walked out of the building into a storm of questions. Mrs. Carter, do you believe the DA covered up evidence? Do you think race played a role? What do you want now? She stopped, turned to the cameras. I want my son home. I want every person who knew this was a lie to answer for it. And I want no more mothers to stand where I stood. Behind her, the crowd erupted in cheers. But Janelle's face stayed still. This wasn't about applause. It was about impact. And she hadn't come this far for anyone's sympathy. She came to break their silence. Later that night, an anonymous leak hit the internet. Internal memos from the Diaz office. Emails. Transcripts. The footage wasn't just ignored, it was buried. Testimonies were altered. Reports rewritten. The cover-up wasn't speculation anymore. It was documented fact. Janelle sat at her kitchen table as the files scrolled across the screen. Ray stood behind her, reading aloud. They knew. They all knew. Janelle whispered, they didn't just fail him. They chose to ruin him. Her phone buzzed nonstop, journalists, attorneys, strangers. But she didn't answer. She was too busy printing every page, highlighting every line. She didn't want headlines. She wanted the courtroom. And this time, she would make sure every single lie burned under oath. They brought Michael back into court. He wore the same uniform, same chains, but his eyes were different. Older. Colder. The Da sat across the room, now the one sweating. The judge reviewed the files, the footage, the sealed documents. I see no legal justification for this suppression, he said. We are reopening this case. The room shifted. Gasps, dealt. Murmurs. Janelle wept quietly. Michael looked straight at the DA. You stole everything from me, and you sleep just fine. The DA opened his mouth, but no sound came. The gavel slammed. For the first time, the sound wasn't a sentence. It was a door cracking open. A second chance. Not justice. Not yet. But the beginning of it. Michael stepped out of the prison gates just after sunrise. The world looked almost unfamiliar, too bright, too fast, too free. Janelle stood waiting, arms crossed, tears held in check. When he saw her, he didn't smile. He walked slowly, almost unsure of his own body. 7 years had passed. He had gone in as a boy and come out a man. No one recognized. Janelle opened her mouth, but nothing came. She reached for his hand. He let her. Their fingers interlocked, clumsy, foreign. 100 reporters waited behind barriers, shouting his name. But he didn't look at them. Just kept his eyes on the sky like he couldn't believe it hadn't changed. Janelle whispered, "You're home." Michael blinked slowly, voice hollow. This doesn't feel like home. Back at the house, nothing fit. The walls seemed smaller. The air too still. Michael wandered through his old bedroom, fingers grazing the desk, the trophies, the untouched envelope still tacked on the wall. You kept this here? He asked. Janelle stood in the doorway. I couldn't take it down. It was the last thing you earned before they took everything. Michael sat on the bed, staring at the envelope. I don't even know if I want to open it anymore. She said nothing. He looked up. "Do you think I'm still that kid?" She stepped forward and said, "No, but I think he's still in you somewhere, and I hope you find him again." Michael didn't respond, but he didn't look away. They tried to celebrate. Janelle made his favorite dinner. A few friends came, but Michael barely touched his plate. He sat in silence as laughter echoed around him, detached. The room felt too loud, too bright, like it didn't belong to him. One friend raised a toast to freedom. Michael looked down. "It doesn't feel free." The room fell quiet. Janelle put her hand on his shoulder. "You don't have to pretend." He nodded once. "I don't know how to be out here. I don't even know who I am out here." She looked at him gently. "Then we'll figure it out together." He didn't smile, but the corner of his lip twitched, just for a second. Enough to know he heard her. Later that night, Michael stood alone at the bathroom mirror. He touched his face, tracing a scar on his cheek he barely remembered getting. He leaned in closer. His reflection didn't match the person in his memories. The boy who once dreamed, who once loved school and books and quiet days, was buried under years of noise, fear, and silence. He turned off the light and sat on the bathroom floor, knees pulled to his chest. Janelle found him there an hour later, eyes open, unblinking. She knelt beside him but didn't speak, just wrapped her arms around him as he trembled. He whispered, "I don't know how to be okay." She held him tighter. "You don't have to be. You just have to be here." The next morning, Michael walked to a small cemetery on the edge of town. He found his best friend's grave, fresh flowers already there. He knelt, fingers brushing the name engraved in stone. "I'm sorry I didn't speak sooner," he whispered. "I thought silence was safer." His voice cracked. "But they turned my silence into guilt." He sat with the grave for a long time, letting the wind carry his words. Behind him, Janelle stood at a distance, not intruding, just witnessing. She knew this wasn't closure. There was no such thing. But it was the first step toward something else. Not healing, not yet, but honesty. And maybe, for now, that was enough. Michael sat before a panel of students at a local college, an innocence awareness seminar. He didn't want to speak, but Ray had asked, and Janelle thought it might help. He stared at the microphone for a long time. Then he said, "They said justice was blind, but justice knew exactly what I looked like." The room fell quiet. Michael continued, voice steady but distant. "They didn't see my grades, or my mom, or my life, just a statistic, a slot to fill. I wasn't tried, I was traded." A girl in the front wiped her eyes. Michael paused. "I didn't get my years back, but maybe someone else will if you don't look away next time." He stepped away before applause. It wasn't for show. It was survival. Janelle walked past the courthouse that night. She hadn't meant to. Her feet just led her there. The building loomed in the twilight, unchanged. Cold stone. Sharp edges. But this time, she didn't look up with fear. She stood still, breathing deeply. Across the street, someone lit a candle vigil for another wrongfully convicted teen. Janelle crossed and joined them. She held a small candle. Its flame flickered but stayed. Around her, others gathered, some silent, some praying, some crying. A woman leaned over and asked, "Was it your son?" Janelle nodded. "He's home now." The woman squeezed her hand. "Mine isn't." They didn't need to speak more. The fire between them did the rest. Michael sat on his porch, reading one of his old letters. The ink had faded, the paper soft from wear. In it he had written, "I'm afraid I'll disappear in here." He folded it carefully and looked up at the street. Kids played down the block. Music drifted from a window. Normal sounds. But to him they felt distant, like echoes from a life just out of reach. Janelle stepped outside with 2 mugs. "Hot chocolate," she said. He smiled faintly. "You still remember." She sat beside him. They sipped in silence. After a while Michael said, "I think I want to go back to school." Janelle didn't answer right away. Then she nodded. Then we start there. For the first time, his smile reached his eyes. Inside their home, the news played quietly in the background. Another trial. Another young black teen accused. Michael watched without blinking. Janelle muted the volume. He turned to her. He looks like me. She nodded. I know. They sat in silence. Then Michael stood, walked to his room, and pulled out a notebook. He began writing, not a letter this time, but a plan. Notes. Laws. Date. Statistics. He wasn't sure what it would become, a program, a project, a fight, but it was movement. Later, Janelle peeked through the door. He sat at the desk, focused, steady. The boy who once wrote from a cell was writing for something bigger now. He hadn't forgotten. He had transformed. Michael stood once more outside the courthouse. Same stone steps. Same heavy doors. But everything was different. He wore a clean black suit, older now, his expression harder, wiser. Behind him, another case was being tried. Another boy, same age he had been. Same look in his eyes. Michael watched as the bailiff led him inside. Cameras clicked nearby. Someone asked, "Do you think justice has changed?" Michael didn't answer right away. He looked into the lens and said, "Justice isn't blind, it's just expensive." Then he walked away. Past the press. Past the steps. Toward a future, still uncertain, but finally his to shape. The camera lingered. The doors closed behind him. Silence.